She told her friends she barely noticed him. 3 weeks later, she was outside his place at 2 a.m., typing messages she swore she'd never send to anyone. Not because he was better looking, not because he had money. So what changed? Here's the uncomfortable truth most people won't say out loud. Attraction isn't built on logic, it's triggered. And once it's triggered correctly, it bypasses everything she thinks she wants. There's a moment, brief, almost invisible, where a woman's perception of you can flip completely. Miss it, and you stay forgettable. Hit it, and you become difficult to shake. And the strange part, most men walk straight past that moment without even realizing it exists. This is the method no one talks about. Not because it's complex, but because it works a little too well. It taps into something deeper than preferences, deeper than standards, something wired, instinctive, and very hard to resist. You've seen its effects before, in relationships that last decades, and in connections that unravel everything. Same mechanism, same trigger. By the end of this, you'll understand why some men linger in a woman's mind long after they've left the room, while others are forgotten before the bill even arrives. And more importantly, you'll know exactly when that narrow window opens, because it only opens once. But before we go any further, I need you to let go of something you've probably believed since you were 15, and it's going to sting a bit. You've been told by teachers, by friends, by every piece of mainstream advice that attraction is about what you have, your height, your money, your humor, your confidence. So you built yourself like a product, stacking traits, polishing edges, hoping one day you'd be enough. Let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever done everything right, said the right things, stayed composed, been respectful, and still watched her lose interest? Of course you have, because deep down you already know this truth, but you've been avoiding it. Attraction has never been about what you are. It's about what happens inside her when she's around you. Read that again, slowly. Most men walk into an interaction trying to prove their value. They're performing, adjusting, filtering themselves in real time. It's subtle, but she feels it. And the moment she feels you trying, you've already lost ground. Now compare that to the man who doesn't perform. He walks in, and instead of asking, "Do you like me?" he creates an experience that makes her ask, "Why do I feel like this around him?" That's a completely different game. One is auditioning, the other is designing the experience itself. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because once you see this, you start to realize why certain men you know aren't better than you, leave a much deeper mark. It's not luck, it's not genetics, it's not even confidence in the way you've been taught. It's something far more precise. There's a word for it, old, almost forgotten, imprint. And I want you to picture this because it's real history, not some internet theory. 12th century France. A man named Peter Abelard, brilliant, arrogant, dangerous, in a quiet way. He's hired to tutor a young woman, Heloise, intelligent, curious, protected. Now on paper, this should have been nothing. A teacher, a student, predictable, controlled. But something shifted. And if you've ever been in a situation where the tension felt different, you'll recognize this. Not loud, not obvious, just this underlying current that both people feel but don't name. Within months, she wasn't just interested, she was consumed, pregnant, emotionally entangled, locked in. They married in secret, and when her uncle found out, he didn't argue, he didn't negotiate. He had Abelard mutilated in his sleep. Now, most people think the story ends there. It doesn't, because what matters isn't what happened to his body. It's what happened inside her mind. Years pass. He becomes a monk. She becomes a nun. Distance, silence, separation. And still, she writes to him. Not casually, not politely, obsessively. She confesses that even during prayer, she couldn't stop replaying him, that she would rather be his mistress than the wife of an emperor. Think about that for a second. A woman in a convent, still mentally pulled back to a man she can never have again. That's not normal attraction. That's imprint. He didn't just sleep with her. He altered the way her brain experienced him. He became the reference point. Every future emotion compared to him and falling short. And before you dismiss this as some romantic exaggeration, this is actually something your brain does all the time. It's called state-dependent memory. Your mind doesn't store moments like files in a folder. It ties them to emotional intensity. That's why you remember exactly where you were during certain moments of your life, because the emotion branded it into you. And whoever was there gets fused into that memory. Now here's where most men fail. They create nothing intense. They play safe. They stay agreeable. They aim to be liked. And what does that produce? Nothing. No spike. No tension. No contrast. Just neutral. You've been that guy before. The date goes well. Conversation flows. No awkwardness. And then she disappears. Not because you did something wrong, but because you didn't do anything that registered. You were pleasant. And pleasant is forgettable. Pleasant is background noise. Pleasant is what she experiences with everyone. Now contrast that with a different kind of interaction. The kind where something unpredictable happens. A moment that slightly breaks the rules. A shift in tone. A line that hits deeper than expected. Suddenly, she's alert. Her body reacts before her logic catches up. There's tension, curiosity, a bit of uncertainty. And that's when the switch flips. Because now, she's not just talking to you. She's feeling you. That's the moment most men are too afraid to create. But the ones who do, they become unforgettable. 3 months later, she's still thinking about him. And the guy who was perfect on paper. She can't even remember his last name. So how do you actually create an imprint? This is where most men quietly disqualify themselves. Not because they don't understand the idea, but because they don't have the nerve to execute it. Because what I'm about to say sounds simple until you try to do it. You have to take her somewhere emotionally. She's never been before. Not unsafe, not inappropriate, just unfamiliar. And that's exactly what scares you, because you've been trained your whole life to keep things smooth, predictable, good vibes only. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you said something in a conversation with a woman, and you actually felt your own heart rate go up a bit? Exactly. You play it safe, like most men. And safe is invisible. Every interaction she has follows the same script. She already knows what you're going to ask before you open your mouth. What do you do? Where are you from? How was your weekend? She's answered these questions 100 times. Maybe 1,000. She's not in the conversation. She's running a program, smiling, nodding, performing. And you think you're connecting with her, but you're not. You're just another interchangeable experience. Now here's where it shifts. The imprint begins the moment you break that script. Not loudly, not awkwardly, precisely. She's talking about her job, explaining something she's said 100 times before. And instead of following along like every other man, you pause. You actually look at her, not at her face, through it. And you say something like, "Be honest. You don't really care about any of that, do you?" Watch what happens. There's always a reaction, a small one, but it's there. A flicker, a pause, a slight tension in her body. She laughs it off, deflects, tries to pull things back to safety. But something just cracked, and now you have a choice. This is the moment most men fail, because they feel that tension, and they panic. They soften it. They joke. They backtrack. They rescue her and themselves from the discomfort. And just like that, the moment dies. You ever done that? You felt something shift, and instead of leaning into it, you pulled back. Yeah, that's why she forgot you. But if you don't retreat, if you hold it, if you stay calm, grounded, almost indifferent to the tension in the air, she starts to lean in, slowly, because now she's not dealing with a man who needs things to be easy. She's dealing with a man who can sit inside intensity without flinching, And that does something to her, because most people, especially her, are constantly managing how they're perceived, filtering, adjusting, hiding parts of themselves. But in that moment, you're inviting something else. You're saying without saying it, you don't need to perform here. And if you hold that frame long enough, she drops something real, not the polished version, not the safe answer, something honest. Maybe it's a frustration she never says out loud. Maybe it's a thought she thinks is too much. Maybe it's a side of her she only shows when she's alone. And when that happens, that's the imprint. Not because you impressed her, because you unlocked something inside her that she doesn't experience with other men. You gave her access to herself. And now, whether she admits it or not, she associates you with that feeling. That's where it gets dangerous. Because once a man becomes tied to that level of emotional exposure, he doesn't compete with other men anymore. He becomes the reference point. Now let's take this further. There's a pattern you've seen before, even if you didn't understand it at the time. You've seen a guy, maybe not the best looking, not the richest, not the most polished, but women around him act differently, more intense, more invested, almost pulled in. And you sit there thinking, what does he have that I don't? It's this. He's not trying to be liked. He's willing to create moments other men avoid. Moments with tension, with depth, with a bit of edge. Now here's the part most men get wrong. Even after understanding all of this, they think, all right, I just need to make her uncomfortable. No, that's amateur thinking. It's not about making her uncomfortable. It's about holding a space where truth becomes more comfortable than performance. There's a difference. One repels, the other pulls her in, and you'll feel it when it's working. The conversation slows down. There are pauses, but they're not awkward. They're charged. She looks at you a little longer than usual. She starts choosing her words more carefully. Not because she's guarded, but because she's present now. That's when you know. Her nervous system is no longer on autopilot. She's in it with you. Now here's the brutal reality most men can't handle. When that moment arrives, you will feel the urge to escape it, to lighten it, to break it, to make things normal again. Because intensity exposes you as well. And if you can't handle being seen, you won't be able to handle her being seen either. That's the real barrier, not technique. Capacity. Because the man who creates imprint isn't doing tricks. He's holding a level of presence most people avoid their entire lives. And when you stay there without flinching, without needing validation, without rushing to resolve the tension, she feels something she rarely feels with men. Safety inside intensity. And that combination is addictive. Because what you're communicating without saying a word is this: I can handle you, even the parts you hide. And that message doesn't go to her logic. It goes somewhere much deeper, somewhere ancient, somewhere that remembers and doesn't let go. The second layer of the imprint, almost no one talks about it. Because this is where things stop being social and start becoming real. It's called transgressive bonding. And if you don't understand this, you'll always stay on the surface with women, no matter how confident you act. Here's the truth. People don't live as themselves. They live as edited versions. She has a public self, the one you meet first. Polished, controlled, safe. And then there's everything underneath. The thoughts she filters, the impulses she suppresses, the desires she's never said out loud. That pressure doesn't disappear. It builds. And most men never touch it. They stay up top, talking about travel, work, hobbies, while she's sitting there thinking, this is nice, but I've felt this 100 times. Now here's where the shift happens. The moment she steps slightly outside that controlled version of herself, and you don't punish her for it, you don't react, you don't judge, you don't get weird about it, you stay solid. That's when something clicks. Because now, you're no longer just a man she's talking to. You become the man she shared something real with. And that changes the entire dynamic. Let me make this concrete. You're sitting with her, and the conversation drifts somewhere unexpected. She says something a bit sharper than she should, admits something she usually hides, maybe even contradicts the image she's been presenting. And right there's a microsecond where she checks your reaction. You've felt this before, that split second where someone reveals something and waits. Most men fail right there. They laugh it off. They correct her. They try to smooth it over. Or worse, they get too excited. You can tell me anything. No, that kills it, because now she feels exposed and observed, and she shuts it down. But if you stay calm, almost like nothing she said surprised you, like you already knew there was more beneath the surface, she relaxes, not fully, not instantly, but enough, and that enough is all it takes. Because what she feels in that moment isn't attraction in the way you've been taught. It's relief. Relief that she didn't have to pretend. Relief that she stepped slightly outside the mask and nothing bad happened. Relief that you didn't move. And relief bonds much deeper than excitement ever will. Now you're not just another guy anymore. You're the guy who saw something real and stayed. That puts you in a completely different category. Not her outer world, where everyone is competing, but her inner world, where almost no one gets access. And once you're there, you don't get compared, you get remembered. Now, there's a pattern here that's been repeated for centuries. Men who understood this didn't rely on charm. They didn't overwhelm women with attention or validation. They became containers, spaces where a woman could drop the performance completely. And once she does that with you, it's very hard for her to go back to surface-level interactions with other men, because now everything else feels empty. You ever notice how some women stay emotionally tied to a man who wasn't even the best option on paper? This is why he got access to something deeper. Now here's the part most men won't accept. Physical attraction is not the starting point. It's the consequence. If you try to go straight for her body, you stay replaceable. You become a moment, maybe even a regret. But if you get into her mind first, if you create that internal shift, her body follows naturally, not forced, not negotiated. It just happens, because she already feels connected in a way she can't explain logically. Now let's break the structure down, because this isn't random. There's a sequence. Miss one part, and it falls apart. First, you disarm the performance, not with compliments. Compliments keep her inside the mask. You need to see through it. You notice something she didn't expect you to notice. Something subtle, something real. You're a lot more controlled than you let on, but it slips sometimes. Now she's paying attention, because you're not responding like everyone else. You're reading her. Second, you create the opening, not by interrogating her, by going first. And this is where most men fake it, and she feels it instantly. You don't dump your trauma. You don't overshare like you're looking for sympathy. You reveal something with weight, but with control. Something that shows depth without losing composure. And then you stop. You let the silence sit. That silence does the work for you, because now there's space, and humans hate empty space. So she fills it, and when she fills it with something real, you're in. Third, and this is where everything gets decided. You seal it. Whatever she reveals, no reaction, no judgment, no surprise, just recognition. Like it fits, like it makes sense, like it was always there. And then you build on it. You create a shared space that only exists between you and her. Small references, subtle callbacks, a tone that belongs only to that interaction. Now it's no longer just a conversation. It's a world, and she's inside it with you. That's the bond, not to you as a man on paper, but to the experience of you. And here's why this works on a deeper level most people don't even understand. She's not testing you the way you think. She's not asking, is he good enough? She's asking something far more primitive. Can this man handle me completely? Not the easy parts, the parts she hides, the contradictions, the intensity, the edge. Every moment of tension, every uncomfortable shift, it's a test. And most men fail instantly. They try to fix it. They try to escape it. They try to soften it. And in doing that, they reveal something weak. They need her to be easy, so they can feel in control. But the man who passes, he doesn't need that. He stays grounded, unmoved, present, and that triggers something ancient in her, something that doesn't care about your job, your money, your lines. Her nervous system registers one thing: this man won't break. This man can hold what I am. And that is where real attraction begins. There's a story most people misunderstand or never even look at properly. The court of Louis XV, power, status, beauty everywhere, endless options, and yet one woman holds his attention for nearly 20 years. Not the youngest, not the most beautiful, not even the most charming in the traditional sense. So what was it? Because if you don't understand this, you'll keep losing to men who on paper shouldn't even be competition. Her name was Madame de Pompadour, and what she did had nothing to do with seduction, the way you've been taught. It wasn't about the bedroom, it was about what happened in the quiet moments when everything dropped. See, every man around the king treated him like a symbol, careful, polished, controlled. They studied him, they adapted to him, they tried to please him. Sound familiar? That's exactly how most men treat women. They're attracted to, they adjust, they perform, they try to get it right. And in doing that, they become forgettable. But she didn't do that. She stepped out of the script completely. She didn't relate to the king. She related to the man underneath it, the part no one else touched, the doubt, the boredom, the quiet frustration of being constantly admired, but never actually seen. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because you've probably never done this with a woman. Not really. You've seen her surface, maybe even parts of her personality. But have you ever sat with her without trying to impress, fix, entertain, or move things forward? Just held her there? Most men can't. They need momentum. They need validation. They need things to go well. But she sat in his uncertainty. When he doubted himself, she didn't rush to reassure. When he showed something small, insecure, even weak, she didn't pull back. She didn't judge. She stayed, and that's where the hook was set. Because think about this. A man who has everything is surrounded by people who give him what he should feel: respect, admiration, politeness, but almost no one gives him what he actually feels. And the same applies to her. Every guy she meets is trying to show her a good time, make her laugh, keep things light, avoid anything too real. So she never drops. She never goes there. She never feels anything beyond surface-level attraction. And then she meets someone different, not louder, not flashier, just deeper. He notices what she hides. He doesn't react. He doesn't try to fix it. He just stays there with it. And suddenly, she feels seen in a way she's not used to. That's the moment everything changes. That's when you stop being a guy she's talking to and start becoming something else entirely. Now here's where most men get it wrong, even after understanding all this. They think intensity means pressure, being dominant in an obvious way, being provocative, pushing. That's not it. That's noise. Real intensity is quiet. It's controlled. It's when you say something simple, but it lands deeper than anything she's heard all week. Let me show you the difference. Most men will ask, so what are your dreams? Safe, predictable, useless. She has a rehearsed answer ready. But the man who leaves a mark asks something else. What did you want before you started playing it safe? Now she pauses, because that question doesn't have a script. It forces her inward. And if you hold eye contact right there without rushing, you'll feel it shift. Or this. Most men say, You have a beautiful smile. She's heard that since she was 16. It means nothing. But if you say you smile a lot, but it doesn't always reach your eyes, now you've crossed into territory most men avoid. Not aggressive, not disrespectful, just precise. And now she's alert, because you're not responding to her performance. You're seeing through it. And here's the uncomfortable truth. This has nothing to do with lines. It's about what you're willing to step into. Most men live their entire lives in the shallow end, because depth requires something they've never built. Stability under pressure, the ability to sit in a moment that isn't easy and not collapse it. So how do you build that? First, silence. Most men are terrified of it. They fill every gap with words, jokes, questions, because silence feels like failure. But silence is where everything real happens. Try this. Next time there's a pause, don't fill it. Hold it. Let it stretch longer than feels comfortable. You'll feel the tension. Good, stay there. Watch what happens. She'll start talking, and what comes out won't be surface level anymore. Second, remove your need for approval. And I don't mean pretending. I mean genuinely not needing her to like you. Because the second you need that, you start adjusting, filtering, losing your edge. But when you don't need it, something flips. Now she's the one leaning in, trying to understand you, trying to earn your attention. That's when the dynamic shifts. Third, get comfortable with her discomfort. This is where almost every man fails. She hesitates, she deflects, she tests you, and he panics, he softens, backtracks, turns it into a joke. And just like that, he loses the frame. But if you stay steady, if you don't react, if you let her feel that moment fully, she stops testing. Because she realizes something. You're not going anywhere, and that's rare. Now here's the final mistake that destroys everything. Even if you get this right, you create the connection, you feel like you've won, and then you become predictable, available, safe, easy. And slowly, it fades. No drama, no clear reason, just gone. You felt this before. Something was there, and then suddenly it wasn't. That's because the imprint wasn't maintained. You stopped creating depth. You stopped breaking the pattern. You became like everyone else, comfortable, and comfort kills tension. The truth is this: the relationships that last aren't the ones that avoid intensity. They're the ones that return to it, again and again. Not chaos, not instability, but controlled depth. Moments where the surface breaks and something real comes through. That's what keeps her. Not your looks, not your status, the experience of you. And once she's felt that, everything else feels incomplete. There's one final piece most men never confront, and it's the difference between a man who uses this and a man who becomes it. Intent. Because everything you've just heard, every shift, every moment, every psychological opening, it can be used the wrong way. You can use it to pull, to hook, to create dependency, and it will work for a while. You'll get the messages, the late night calls, the attention. But there's a cost no one talks about, because what you build doesn't just trap her, it traps you too. This is the part most men don't expect. The imprint doesn't move in one direction. It never has. The moment you create that space where she drops the mask, where she shows you something real, you're not just watching, you're inside it, and that means something else is happening at the same time. She's seeing you too, not the version you show the world, the real one, the one behind your own control, your own restraint. And if you're not as solid as you think you are, that's where things start to get complicated. Because now, it's not just her who feels something, it's both of you. You ever had that? Where it started as control and somehow turned into attachment, where you thought you were leading it, and suddenly you were thinking about her more than you should. That's not a mistake. That's the mechanism working exactly as intended. The bond is mutual, the exposure is mutual, And the private world you create, you don't stand outside of it, you live inside it. That's why men who play with this without understanding it end up losing themselves in it. They think they're building influence, but they're building a cage, and then one day, they realize they don't want to leave. Now flip that, because when this is done right, not as a tactic, but as a way of being, it becomes something else entirely. Something most people go their entire lives without ever touching. Real intimacy, not the soft, surface-level version. I'm talking about the kind where two people see each other clearly and neither one flinches. That's rare, extremely rare, and it only happens when you stop trying to control the outcome and start holding the moment. Now here's where I need you to be honest with yourself. You've listened to all of this. You understand it, at least intellectually, but that doesn't change anything, because knowledge alone is useless. You've known what to do in situations before and still didn't do it. So the question is simple. When the moment comes, will you actually hold it, or will you fall back into what's familiar? Filling the silence, playing it safe, trying to be liked, because that's the real test. Not what you know, what you do when it matters. The next time you're sitting across from a woman, there's going to be a moment, a small one, easy to miss, where the conversation could go deeper or stay surface level. You'll feel it, that slight tension, that opening. And in that moment, you'll have a choice. Most men ignore it. They go back to safe territory, and nothing happens. But if you lean into it, if you ask the question that's beneath what's being said, if you hold eye contact just a second longer than normal, if you don't rush to resolve the tension, that's where it starts. Not with some grand move, with a shift. One real moment, one break in the script, one truth, received without flinching. That's all it takes. And here's the part you won't like, but you need to hear. Every woman you've lost, every time she said, "I don't feel it anymore," every connection that slowly died out, it wasn't because you weren't good enough. It's because nothing ever happened. No shift, no depth, no imprint. You gave her what every other man gives: consistency, politeness, comfort, and she felt nothing different. So she left. Not dramatically, just quietly, because there was nothing holding her there. She didn't need more effort. She needed a different experience, something that disrupted her, something that stayed with her after you were gone. You had the capacity for that. You just never used it. Now you know. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So the next move is yours. Stay where you are, or step into something most men will never understand. And if you felt something shift while listening to this, not just interest but recognition, then you already know this isn't for everyone. Most men don't want truth. They want comfort. This channel isn't built for them. It's built for the few who'd rather see things as they are and use it. Now here's what most men still won't see, even after everything you've just heard. In the next video, I'm going to break down the exact moment a woman tests you and how most men fail it without even realizing it's happening. The subtle shift in her behavior that decides whether you become unforgettable or instantly replaceable. If you think you understand the game now, wait until you see that. That's where everything either locks in or collapses. But for now, you don't need to wait. Watch the video that's appearing on your screen right now, because that's where you'll see how this method actually plays out in real interactions. The signals, the timing, the mistakes most men make right after they create attraction. Click it now, stay in this. And if this opened your eyes even a little, make sure you subscribe and like the video. Most men will never understand the game, but you do. I'll see you among the few.